All right, perfect. Good morning, everyone. My name is Nima Jokilaakso, and I'm a senior advisor at Business Finland in our Stockholm office. And it's a pleasure for me to be here this morning and open up this session on public procurement in Sweden. It's the first of a series of 3. There is going to be another seminar on Norway and Denmark later on, but they're all unique in the sense that they cover the specific markets. And today we have here 3 experts. They're going to present themselves, but it's a great pleasure for me to having them here. And they will go through the general aspects of public procurement. They're also going to get into a case, and there's going to be room for questions later. There's also going to be a possibility for all of you who are here to have individual meetings with them. That will be held in the cafeteria area, and you can do that for as long as this house is open. And our experts have also moved their flights for later on, so you don't need to feel rushed when having your one-on-one meetings. Some practicalities. This morning's session is going to be recorded for later usage. As you can see, there's a film team here, and that recording is going to be for the first part of this seminar. So during this first part that is recorded, save your questions, and you will have lots of time for those after the recording has ended. Also, because we are recording, make sure to switch off your phones or put it on flight mode so that doesn't disturb the recording. And there is going to be some coffee, tea, and a sandwich at 10:30. So don't worry, you will also get revitalized once you've been filled up with a lot of new information. So with that said, I want to introduce our speakers, Stefan Berglund, Stefan Holm, and Håkan Tenelius. The scene is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Stefan Berglund. I've been working with public procurement from both selling and buying parts for about 20 years. And I have my distinguished colleague, Stefan here. You can tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, hello, my name is Stefan Holm, and I've also been working a lot of times with public procurement in Sweden, mostly on business organizations like service business organization since 2003. So a lot of times and a lot of connections with politics and a lot of connections with separate companies. And also my colleague, we started a business 1 year ago, me and Håkan.
Yes, so our company is Tenelius Holm. I have been working with public procurement, but only with healthcare and some, what do you call it? Mainly healthcare and elderly care, I would say. And a lot of politics and lobbyism as well. So I will tell you some about the politics and public procurement.
Great. So we have politics and we have the practical. So that's what we're going to feed into today. From, like the top legislation, the authorities, down to how we're actually going to make a tender for you guys today. All right, welcome very much. Let's start. We have an agenda today. It's going to be quite a tempo. We got a lot of things we have to inform you about. And if I'm correct, Nima, there's some people coming in as well. Some more. Great. So this is what we are going to go through today. And like Nima said, since we are recording this, we have to try to take the questions later. We have a lot of time for it. Otherwise, it's going to be a little bit messed up with the recording. All right. Gents, what do you say? Should we get started? Håkan?
Yeah. As you saw briefly at the agenda, we'll start with the politics. And it's good to know that politics have a certain role when talking about public procurements in Sweden. As in Finland, of course, most of the buying authorities are governed by politicians, especially the municipalities and the regions, former called landsting in Sweden, but actually they changed the name Yesterday. Yeah, that's right. Regions. Remember that. The municipalities, they are responsible for the elderly care, the home care, and the handicap care. And the regions are in charge of primary care, specialist care, the hospitals, and some of the dental care. But some of the buying institutions are not directly governed by politicians, such as the universities. This map shows where how much the municipalities buy from private providers. And there are mainly three factors that affects the tendency to buy. It's the tradition of procurement. Are you used to buy? The politicians' view on profits in welfare. I'm not sure if you have had that debate here in Sweden, but in Finland, but in Sweden, I will go back to that. That has been quite an issue. And there is also fear of doing wrong that can make the politicians to hesitate from buy from private companies. According to the map, you can see the main buyers is defined in the greater Stockholm area, the Gothenburg area, and in the very south, in Skåne. And the reason is both that their share of that they buy a lot from private companies, but this is also where people live, high population. These regions and municipalities, they are all different buyers, each one. And that is very good to know if you want to sell to them. You have to keep an eye on each one to see what they want to buy. We'll tell you later how to do that. As I mentioned, some of the politicians, local politicians, are afraid of doing wrong and they hesitate because, to buy from private suppliers. In Swedish media, you can easily find lots of examples of news that has connection to unsuccessful procurement. But if some of these local politicians are anxious, the Swedish government encourages procurement, and that is regardless of political color. The government and the parliament will always obey the directives of the European Union. Sweden strives to be the top of the class, so much that some critics says that Sweden exaggerates in trying to follow the EU intentions. And the amount of regulations and requirements is the reason why procurement in Sweden is considered to be a little bit more complicated than in comparable countries. As I said, there has been a debate in Sweden whether profits should be allowed in companies that produce welfare services. This was a very important issue for the Social Democrats and the Left Party, the term between 2014 and 2018. Both those parties wanted to stop private for-profit companies in care and in education. But the debate actually didn't really affect public procurement on healthcare. Those who criticized the for-profit companies didn't include, this is important, they didn't include drugs, medical technology, or medical equipment. It was just care they discussed. And it's also good to know that this issue is not on the agenda of the present government cooperation in Sweden. I should say, though, that the debate is asleep. It is not dead. The public sector in Sweden, as I think the case is in Finland, is facing some really big challenges. The population grows fast. One reason is the immigration we have had lately. elderly people's proportion of the population grows, and there is also a growing lack of competent health professionals. Therefore, there is a need of innovation. There is a need of new effective solutions in welfare. And that means that public procurement will be an even more important tool to the politicians that have to solve these problems. If we look at trends in Swedish public procurement, you will find these, for example. The authorities tend to ask for solutions they are used to. That means there are quite small chances for innovation. But on the other hand, there is also a possibility for sellers to influence, to show new solutions to the buyers and to the politicians. We'll get back to that, how to do that. We have fewer tenders, like in other EU countries. We know that. We have studied in our company. And there is a lack of tenders from other countries, even though this is the idea of the EU to favor this. And we also have sustainability in focus. I guess you are familiar to these trends in sustainability. It's a hard word. Green public procurement, circular bio-based economy. In some procurements, tenders are expected to increase employment in certain groups, like the handicapped people. And they ask for criteria for reasonable working conditions. Well, my conclusion is, if you can show the authorities that you can deliver solutions that make healthcare more efficient, if you can show sustainability, and if you have competitive prices, then you will be the winner in Swedish public procurement. Stefan Hall.
Yes, thank you. We now go into a little bit more of the system, how the system of public procurement works, and also some of the regulations. I'm certain that you are familiar with most of it from Finland, but this is, a way of learning, listening to it a lot. So me and Stefan will be changing here, taking this together. We have in Sweden 2 central authorities that are important to see and follow, and that's the National Agency for Public Procurement. They have some support. They give information about the market. They have actually telephone contacts and email contacts with a lot of the market, both the authorities themselves and also companies. They are really pushing forward, saying that they want to help the companies to the market. They take every year they publish national statistics of how the market is, how it works, in separate different aspects. A really good statistic information. They also help the authorities with guidelines, mostly in green procurement, how the demands are going to be published, and they try to do this to lever up the green procurement. The support is pretty good, so if you have questions, you can reach them on this link you see there on the picture. Mostly in Swedish, unfortunately. The other important authority is the Swedish Competition Authority, the Konkurrensverket. And they follow up how the competition is working, and they have a lot in public sector. And they looking up, are they following the regulation? Are they doing their procurements in the right way? They have a possibility of fining the authorities. Actually, Håkan was mentioning here Stockholm region. Stockholm region is actually the one authority that got most of the fines because they really don't follow the regulations as well as the authority wants to. But this is also a good general central authority to follow because they also take forward a lot of information of how the market works. Yes, I stop there. Stefan?
And as Stefan and Stefan both work in public procurement, it's quite fun. And one fun part, you mentioned Stockholm region. The head of public procurement there is named Stefan. So, all right. For you late arrivals, I would like to say that all this material will be handed to you after, so you don't have to, like take notes all the time. And one thing that I actually think we mentioned, one of the best USP we have, is that this whole seminar is, we have the help from NEMA. It's focused for your industry. So now we've been talking about, general and laws and everything, but now we're coming down to your industry because you are most relevant. We followed you got information from NEMA. You are super interested. As a taxpayer, I would like to say more Finnish companies in our healthcare. So I pitched whole of Sweden. Great. Now we're going to talk a little bit some statistics. Swedish public procurement, we buy stuff, services and the goods, consultants and everything for about 700 billion Swedish krona a year. That's quite a lot. I don't know how much you buy in Finland, but I think it's quite a lot of money. We have approximately 19,000 public procurements published every year. It's quite a substantial figure. What's really fun about this is, I would say, this one. That's business for you. Can you start tendering in Sweden, please? Because one more interesting fact here, let's see if I can find this, I'm not used to this, is that this one. 40% in general, in all public procurement, leads to contracting 40%. But in your industry, it's 75%. It's money there to grab. I would say it's because very large lack of competitive tendering. So you're important, you're good, you're thinking sustainability, and you're very close to Sweden. We'd like to help you to come in and do some tendering in Sweden. 45% as a procurement officer myself, I would say about 50% of my procurements are on quality and some are on price, depending on what you buy. But on total, it is 45%. It's based on lowest price. Because the debate in Sweden is that, oh no, let's not go into public tendering because everything is just price. Low price, no, we go to private sector instead. So it's wrong, okay. I would say, Stefan again, yeah?
Yeah, I show up here.
We mix a little bit, Stefan.
I just want to fill into that statistics that, as Håkan mentioned before, there's less and less tenders in Sweden. Actually, now we can see in the statistics that almost 40% of all the announced, how do you call it? Let's see. The procurements announced, published procurements, almost 40% of them has only one or two tenders. So you really have a good chance of coming in and telling we also tender. We also want this competition. So a little bit short about the legal system, which, as you know, is a European Union Act, and every country has to follow it. But only some parts of it that is really important to know and to follow. You know, it's 5 principles that are actually the base of all the regulation. And those 5 principles the authority have to follow. As you know, it's equal treatment. All the competitors must be treated equal way. it means that you have the same information at the same time. That's really important. And that's something they all know, the authorities. It's transparency. So you have to be transparent with the process. That you have to understand how we are going to be measured during this process. You have to understand why you're not chosen or the other chosen. Okay. It's also an important part is proportionality, which means that the requirements must be proportionate to what the object of the matter is. It has to be followed. And also there is non-discrimination and mutual recognition, and that's even more important when you're from a different country, that the Swedish authorities must mutual accept if there are Finnish systems that you come with to Sweden. They have to accept that as well. They can't just say, we have a Swedish way of doing this, then we stop the Finnish businesses. That it's not possible. So that's really important. Okay, the regulation also follow the processes of procurement. It's actually how the regulation is built up. They describe the process from start to finish. And in some of those processes are also how long time you have to announce the procurement, what happens after that, and how this is going to be done. If you're doing it in what's called the open way, or if you're doing it negotiated way, or if you have a separate system. And we are later on looking at the negotiated system. There is also, as you know, the system is it's cost limit regulated. It's threshold levels, and in Sweden we call that direct award of contract. Below a certain level, you can always sell to the authority without the regulation of the EU system. And that below that level, it's quite easy to buy. As the authority buying, they don't have to follow all these processes. So they can actually give a call to one or two companies and see, let's try you, let's see if this works. And that's my first tip of the day. Try to reach the direct contracts. The value is around 600,000 Swedish crowns for the value of the contract. So it's a pretty good way of getting in. So keep that in mind. And that's also regulated here in the law. It's also regulated what is a contract and what is a framework agreement. And we will get to what a framework agreement is later on. So I don't really get into that now. And what also is subject to the law, what is happening if something goes wrong, and what happens if you have to review in court. And I don't know how it works in Finland, but in Sweden that's also a debate. It's a lot of procedures going into court, around 6 to 7%. There's also I know you have had the same debate in Finland about freedom of choice, the law on freedom of choice. And that we had that since 2009, and that's a really important law for elderly care and health care. And in health care, it's compulsory. The regions have to have a freedom of choice system on the primary care. So they have to let in companies. And that's a good thing, which means that also the private sector of healthcare companies are buying your products. There's also a buyer. Okay, I think I stopped there. I let in Stefan again.
Berglund and Holm.
Welcome.
Thank you. Now I'm going to show you how a day looks in my life when I work as a public procurement officer. Where does the need come from? Some people actually think that the needs are stipulated on the procurement team. No, it is not. It starts with the operations. For instance, let's take a hospital. The hospital needs new cars. So what happens then is that the operations, as I call it, they decide we need to have these, cars of some sort. They contact me at the procurement office, say, hey, we're going to need some cars. And here's also another thing when things go really wrong, is that the specifications, the requirements of the car, when somebody could describe it, you have to describe what kind of car we're going to buy. A lot of people think that spec is made by the public procurement department. In some cases it is. And the common thing about that is it always goes to hell. We do not know how a car should work. That's the operation. They have to write the specifications of what I'm going to buy. I facilitate it. So then, I, as a procurement officer, I take up the formal documents. You're going to see some later on, so you're going to understand. The formal documents for facilitating this purchase. We publish in a database. TED, you're going to show us later on as well, Håkan, how's looking in TED in Europe and in Swedish systems as well. And we wait about 30 days for the tenders to come in, depending on how should I say, how complicated the product or the service is that we're going to buy. I know that Karolinska Institute, that someone probably heard of, yeah. I mean, when they are going to buy some super spectacular things, you can have a tending time on a year. It depends what you. So that's why we procurement officers, we have to bear in mind what is it that we're asking the market for and give them sufficient time so you can actually come with a good tender. Then, after 30 days, we get some tenders. Like Stefan said, fewer and fewer. It's horrible. We're down to approximately 4 in general. It was 5 a couple of years ago, so it's really bad. So please come and help us. We sit and qualify the tender, all the shall requirements. We're going to look at some shall requirements later as well. And then we evaluate, sometimes on price, sometimes with quality and price, whatever. And then we select a winner. And I think it's the same in Finland. Then there's a standstill period of 10 days. And if there's no appeal coming in, then we sign a contract. Yeah. But you have a much cooler picture about that, really much. This is my boring day.
Okay. I sort of want to show this in graphic instead. So I try to do this. This is, so you see, this is a hospital, and first of all, oops, sorry, like that. Where's the pointer? There. Here is the procurement coming out. And you have 35 days of answering it. And here is the companies that are leaving the tenders. And this is sort of the normal way of seeing public procurement. You see the procurement coming out in text. How are you going to be the winner? Is this trying to show? This company has perhaps been here before. Has talking to the user in the system, this doctor. This doctor or the company has an idea of changing the medicine in a new way, a little bit of a new way of thinking. And if you can connect together, you have a fair chance of the user talking to the procurement officer, the one that Stefan is doing all days, almost, when you're not going to Finland. Yeah, and telling that we have important information, new things from the market that we need to get into this this procurement. If the company doesn't talk to her, she doesn't get the information, and we don't have that in the procurement. So probably, if you do all the things right in the second phase, you have a good chance of getting the contract or be a part of the framework contract. So it's really important to follow up and to get in contact. All the major service companies that I've been talking to in my experience, they say we always have a contact with our important customers 12 to 18 months before the contract is coming out. That's when we have the chance of changing, or they see us, they accept that we are a company that are important to them. So that's really my second tip. Get the contacts, and get the contacts before there is even a public procurement out. Okay? Stefan? Yeah?
I got this one. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. And to hook in Stefan here, this is a picture that I made when I was sales director to the procurement, to the public. We were selling services. Because this is really important to understand. This symbolizes a four-year frame contract. We're here today. Today we're here in Finland. As I said, it takes approximately 6 months from the specs to we have the contract. But the important thing here is this, the little thing, it symbolizes about 30-35 days. Is that working as well? Great, thank you very much. That's when the so-called the period. We're not allowed to talk too much because the documents are published. We have this questions and answers time, as you know, who have actually done some procurement. So you have to can ask in writing in the system a couple of questions. But it's pretty much a silent time, these 30 days. But what I tried to convince my staff was that this is totally irrelevant, as you said as well. This is also pretty irrelevant, because this is the deal. Prior to that 30 days, you should have been approximately a year, let's say here. That's where your work should start, by feeding the entity with your information. Why your company is so good, you have to design this tool like this, because then it's going to get this impact much better than the rest of the market. That's when you have to feed in all this information. Because you possibly, here we start to traditionally get a little bit anxious. Okay, we're in the process of doing a procurement. Maybe we should be a little bit silent, a little bit, how should I say, restricted about giving out the information and taking in. Some people are very scared of that. I love talking with the market, but some are. So you have to do this before, because there is no chance in that you are going to change that procurement or the specs in them 30 days. No, that's done here. Got it? So I start standing here instead.
Yeah, it's a lot of running.
Yeah.
I can also fill in a really important part of this process and what is all about discussion and public procurement, where public procurement is heading. And as traditional, the public procurement has always been talking about what is written in the law, and the law says this, it's the procurement process that are focus. But now, and some of the good authorities and important, interesting authorities, is talking about the purchase, the entire purchase situation for the 4 years coming. They can't just look at the how the business is done, looking at only the procurement process. So they are actually changing their name of the titles. They are not anymore procurement officers, but buyers. They are looking at how the private market is working. And a part of that is to see how the deal is working out. If we did a procurement here, year one, and we realized that we didn't get the service that we wanted, and we don't get access to new innovations, and we really want that, especially in the welfare sector. So we have to find a way to get the innovation working all with the deal. And it's interesting to see if that works. Some works a little bit better than others. And that's also a part of your work when you get the contract. Try to make them accept some changes. Try to make them realize that you are going to innovate all the time. So that's just a thought of the day, perhaps. Yeah. Okay, there are two kinds of contracts when you're working with the procurement system, and the procurement officer and the authority choose what to do. They could choose just a contract, and that's a fixed contract. So entrepreneurs, like builders, they're building a house. They want one company building the house, or perhaps a special service, perhaps a software program. They want to buy it and want to own it for a couple of years. So they want a delivery which it's fixed in time and it's fixed in price. Okay, so just a project. They have one company, or you can have a framework agreement. And when I started the public procurement, working with this in 2003, it was called the Hunter license. And the company said, well, we get the framework agreement. That doesn't mean anything more than the position on the market. You have the right to sell to all the municipalities. And now it's regulated. And the regulation says a couple of things. Especially in Sweden, we have discussed that how long time should it be? Well, 4 years, absolutely no longer, if there is not special needs. But almost all the framework agreements are 4 years. There are no guaranteed business. And in some framework agreements, that is not even stipulated. They don't even dare to say how much they will order, which could be criticized, actually, because you have to do the calculation. There are always, it says one or several suppliers. It's always, not always, but it's a lot of times it's more than 2, 3, 4 up to 8, perhaps, dealers in that contract. And it's also quite often several authorities. So they have the chance to get contracts from you. The framework agreement is just an agreement. It's not a contract. The contract is at first when they call out to you and they say, we want to make a deal. And they can do that in different ways. They can either put you up in line and say, we must buy from the first, then we go to second, then we go to 3, okay? Or they can do a new competition situation where they go out and make a mini purchase system where they again choose between the contractors inside the agreement. Okay, and they really like this way of working because that's a new way of perhaps finding lower costs. Yes, I guess that's it. Stefan?
Yeah, I would say, yeah.
Yeah?
I would just like to say a lot of contracting authorities like the framework agreements because you're not obligated to anything, more or less, yeah? But as a businessman, I would say if I'm sitting calculating, for example, for a major consultant services, for instance, in the IT sector, and the entity says, we're not telling you how much we're going to buy. How am I going to calculate my best price? So that's something that we procurement officers, we really have to take under consideration because it's important. Because you can now see in some sectors that when the authority chooses a framework contract, the prices actually go up because you put in a risk factor, a risk premium. So we have to think a lot here.
We can also say in connection to this that in Sweden, a lot of the municipalities and regions are buying for themselves, and also the state authorities. They're buying for themselves, but there's also some central purchaser that are buying for them. So the municipalities have their own organization buying for them together, and they always use framework agreements. And they can buy for like 60 municipalities at a time, and some regions. Also the state system, which is the biggest one, they have a framework agreement buyer that buy for, and they buy IT products, they buy cars, they buy some
fuel, traveling, hotels,
a lot of services. And they on those systems, the state authorities have to follow. They can't choose not to follow if they don't have special reasons for it. So I know, for instance, Norway is much more centralized, and also Denmark. Sweden has a little bit of both. And those those central authorities are really important to follow because they are really good at purchasing. They know how to do it, and they seldom loses in court. So when they do something new, the municipalities or regions are following their ways of working. So they are really state of art, so to speak.
And then some criticism to this is, I don't know if you have similar organizations here in Finland, but some say that the contracts, they're going to be so big and massive that the specs, I'm always coming back to the specs, is going to be, watered out. Because it has to function and work for a state entity with 10 people and the Försäkringskassa with 15,000 people. So there is some legit criticism to it.
So the framework agreement is really based on some kind of medium authority, and it's not good for the big ones, it's not good for the small ones.
Like we're saying in Sweden, it's mellanmjölk.
And also, I have to fill up, also if we talk about the regions, the regions doing it for themselves. They don't really use this central buyers. Okay.
Now, we get into the most important things. How are we going to find the business? These are the prime databases where you can find the procurements. The TED is obviously the one in Europe, which is has a horrible graphic and work style. It doesn't work very well. But I would say a tip as well. When you're going to enter the Swedish market, all of these, OPIC, Avrop, Marcel, they are going to tell you, because you're going to pay for this, they're going to tell you, we cover all procurements there are. No, they do not. Don't fall into that trap. And to be 100% sure, you have to, go through all this, but it's not very clever. The one that we procurement officers say are probably the one that covers the most, approximately 95% of all the procurements, that would be the OPIC. But we can, as we tell you later, we can help you there with the accounts and stuff. But as Stefan said before, I actually call her Stefan in English, a really good way of coming in to a business is through these direct rewards. I don't know how many companies I've invited to discussion that they come and say, I have this product. I think it's going to be very useful for you. I sometimes work with the airport systems. I think it's going to be really good for you. Can I come and demonstrate it? All right, come in and bring the the organization with me, and we sit down and say, what is this? Aha, it's this little gadget that can do this and this for the taxiing of the aircrafts and stuff. And I said, okay, great. Can we make it like a project, see if it works really good? And then we use direct awards. So we can buy for approximately 500 or 600,000, depending on what industry, and we can more or less just shake on it. And that's very important for you to understand, because 500 or 600,000 Swedish krona, okay, it might not be a blockbuster, but what it does for you, and what it does dozens of times for me as a procurement officer, is a way in. They actually come in there and show that this little thing for the tow truck works really, really good. And I bought it for 400,000, all right? Mission completed. We have a new product. Then I realized I have to go out and make a public procurement about this. Who do you think will have a little advantage in that procurement? Naturally, the one who actually done the delivery for me in the first place. So this last one, it is important. So when you go and meet with procurement officers or the manager in the organizations, talk to them and suggest, you can actually, for a small sum, come and try my product or my service in the direct award, and then we just shake on it. All right? Please.
Let me just, it's also an important part of that is when you see how the contracts are built up, because some of the quality issues for the companies is to show earlier references. And if you don't have references from other municipalities or other authorities, you have a difference. You have a slight lower connection to the market. More difficult to get in.
Of course.
So the direct awards are used as that too, to get the references.
Very important. This we're going to go into a little bit further more in our next next session. But we like to lift it here as well, because the thing is that in Sweden, we are considered to be a little bit more, or actually the most formal guys when it comes to public procurement in Europe. It is sad to see. I don't know how many tenders that I have to turn down because they actually forgot to sign a paper. And it hurts me because I love competition. There's so many small things that, for instance, they have an ISO system for quality, but they forgot to send it in. So this is why I say this, and this is what when we help the private organizations with developing their business on the private sector. A shall requirement is not, okay, I'll see if I fix it. It is a shall. 100%. Otherwise, you're out. There's no way you're going to come in again. Here, we are a little bit different than other words. I used to work in Denmark. A shall could be 90%er. In Portugal, shall is a 10%er. And so in Sweden, make sure you actually sign the right things. Make sure all the shall requirements. You're going to see a lot of shall requirements in session number 2. So you're going to see the importance why I actually put it on a special slide as well.
Yeah, this is. We take this special part 2 also because reviewing procedure or överprövning or going to court is quite a big issue in Sweden. We didn't say before, but we have a principle of public access to all official records in Sweden, which means that all the authorities have to leave all their information. It's public. Everything is public. Everything is public that is not secret. But to be secret, they have to take a decision to make it secret. Okay? So all your tenders are public. When you leave it to a Swedish authority, it's a public document. But you can tell them, we need to make part of this secret, like our business intelligence parts that we left here, like our prices, perhaps CVs from persons, like other parts that are your matters that you don't want to show to your competitors. And we're going to say this once again later on because it's so important that you work with this. But you have to know. And this is a reason for why the going to court is quite often used in Swedish, because you can find all the information. What happened? Why did company A got the contract but not company B? Company B gets angry and they look at all the information and they can find some parts that are not really followed the right way. And the second reason for going to court is quite often used is because it's quite easy. You as a supplier can pretty easy find your way to the court. You don't really actually need a lawyer, even though I wouldn't recommend you to. But you can sign the paper, send it to the court, and say why, connect to the procurement law, and also say that you are hurt, the company are damaged because of this, and then you have a case. And they will try it, and they will stop the continuous procurement system to run on that contract. Yeah, and it's no fees, it's no costs. You always get a pretty good, quick first answers. Then it takes around 3 months, sometimes much longer. We have had situations for 2 years where they stop the business going on. Especially crazy in special situations like the migration problem we had in 2015. It stopped by just companies going to court. Yeah, so you will find that, but this is going down in statistics a little bit, from 7-8% down to around 6%. In healthcare, I looked at that in statistics. Healthcare has a little bit more of reviewing procedures. Around 10 to 11% of the business are going to court. Yeah. Yeah, Stefan, I think it's you.
Yeah. I would like to actually just go back one second, because what Stefan said now, everything is public. I don't know, is it in Finland? Because some people that come to me, especially suppliers from Europe, they think it's, wow, it's magic, we can see everything. But this is also why, in connection to the shall requirements, we procurement officers, we don't like being reviewed. I sit with one now, it's been over a year. I want to sign the contract, okay? And it turns out that there was some form of miss in the shall. Somebody actually said they fulfill the requirement, and now it turns out they might not have. So that's what procurement officers do, especially what is it called? Yeah, municipalities. They are backing home because they're getting afraid, because they have so much to do. So that's why they put so many shall requirements, and then follow it up very, very, very closely, just because we don't want to end up in a review process, because it stops the show.
Yes, can I also fill in one more thing? And perhaps my third tip of today is you can learn from your competitors because of the system. So you can also ask for your competitors' tenders and see what do they write and how do they write. Because it's a lot of learning in writing in the right way. That's also a part of being a winner. So, and that's also something I've studied other companies do during the years. They have learned to be better by watching others. So that's a good part of the open system.
It is. Especially if you're a small supplier or new in the market, and some great company like Microsoft, something like that, they can actually show this is our way of delivery and how we secure our partners' business and everything. You can learn a lot, and it's free. So it's good business intelligence. Yeah. Sorry.
Can I ask a question?
Could we take that later? No.
Take the microphone. Thank you. Just a question about this. As you said, that everything is public, and then the company is giving an offer, and the company can try to make it confidential, or who is doing the decision that if I'm the company, I'm giving the offer, and I would like to put my offer totally confidential, and then it should be from your side maybe totally public. So who will draw the line there between that?
First one who will make the decision is me, as the procurement officer. If it's a complicated question, I would contact the legal staff. But then if there is a review, I mean, they don't like it. If I say, yeah, I'm giving you total secrecy, then they actually can go to court to second guess that. And then you do it in kammarrätten, I would say. So they can second guess mine. But it's my knowledge of the what do you call it, the praxis, how it works, is that seldom this court overrules my decision. Seldom, because they think that my decision as sitting in the middle of the business is correct. They're having a hard time second guessing it.
I have been a couple of times in giving an offer, but not very experienced on this. And in one case there was, as I'm the company supplying, offering, they were asking me to give two versions. One version which is kind of showing everything, and then one which is kind of being blacked on some spots that are not public. And I felt kind of, how can I decide? I could draw everything black, of course, and give that in, but I understood that maybe it's not the way it should work, but
But I think that's really, that shows how the authority are working. They don't really know what parts should be secret or not. So they really work with you. They say, we take the decision at home, but we want you to show what's our decision to take. And so if you make it all black, actually some trends in some services has gone that way. And that's been very criticized, because sort of all the system likes the public way of working. So when some companies say, we want completely secrecy, the authority also follow them. So they say, fine, it's okay if you like it. It's your decision. So that also shows that the municipality or the authority do as you like. They follow you. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. We got the instructions that we take the questions a little bit later, but okay. My bad. But a good question. Here comes some practical tips, because now we're getting closer to the business. Seek up the dialogue early. Many in sales department that hasn't been working with public procurement much are quite afraid of us. They think that no, they can't do anything anyways, but it's wrong. We're actually thirsty for information. Both me as a procurement officer and our organization that are writing the specs. So lift the phone, call us. I have a really interesting well-being service that I think you should take a look at. Great, come over here. And work with relationships. Everybody thinks that relationships isn't important when it comes to public procurement. Of course it is. Because once again, if you and I connect really good, and you say, I have this little thing in surgery, could you try buying it? It'll cost you 20,000 Swedish kronor. make it a direct award. That's a relationship. So make that happen, all right? I don't know all you guys which companies you're from, but when you're laying your sales plan, as in all business, try and find out who's actually going to buy you. And then, with, for instance, local experts and such, you can start mapping down your what do you say, your sales plan, which are important. Some could be really small. Once again, one small government entity could be easily persuaded to buy this IT thing for 100,000 Swedish krona. And that will give you a reference so you can actually go to Kammarkollegiet, who buys IT consultants for 4 billion. That could be the difference. All right? And like in all, finding the right stakeholders who actually sits on the public. I love the picture that Stefan has. This doctor standing out in the operations, and she got that idea. That's who you're going to find. All right? Do you want to say something about this? Or you, Håkan?
I just follow up what you said about strategic customers. I'm talking to a lot of businesses that are laying bomb math of putting up tenders after tenders in a lot of buying authorities, and they don't. And after changing the system of we going for the right ones instead, they get the same amount of contracts but a lot less work. It's so many contracts out there. So choose the right ones, and choose the ones that you try to have a contact with before.
And like we saw, almost 1,000 in your business. There should be one. This we just send with you. As an open society and the offentlighetsprincipen, as we call it in Sweden, you actually got a link here. All countries, all the government entities. Here is, I would say, in these three, I would say there would be 3,500 potential clients for you. That's good links. Pretty good. So we just, this is in the material as well for you. All right. I think we're pretty finished there, aren't we?
Time for a break.